Welcome to SmyleCast episode 4. This is super exciting. Four episodes in. Wow.
Amazing.
I have Nikki Fayne here, special guest. I'll let you introduce yourself and we'll get into it.
Thanks, Tyler. Love it. Really happy to be here with you. This room is really chill and cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is the first episode with all the posters up on the wall, which is a momentous occasion. I think.
Who's this guy here in the middle?
It says that it's San Mescalito, the patron and protector of all those souls.
Yeah.
Who dig herbs created by God to enlighten the minds of men.
And women.
Far out, yeah. I think men is an all-encompassing statement for all of us.
You're right.
I think.
Yeah, no, you're right. Sometimes I say, like, I'm boys with so-and-so.
Right. Homies.
Yeah.
You know.
Men.
Right on. But yeah, no, I'm so excited you're here. I just want you to share a little bit, because you've reached out to me several times about chopping this up, and now that it's like finally in fruition, the podcast is happening. I'm so excited you're here. I know you have so many awesome ideas to share, and your energy is very contagious. So
is yours. I think that energy is a huge thing, you know? I think that the positive energy that you're feeling from me, the contagiousness is something that we take out into the world and we use in every avenue, right? And it's great, and it starts with a smile, and I think that was my initial connection to you, and also just your experience, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that being on a podcast is always fun, and having a good conversation is always fun. And, you know, it's a great opportunity to let other people be a fly on the wall and observe. And they see themselves in our conversation.
100%. I think sometimes it's like we are kind of just like the vehicle for expression. We have these mouths that speak, but it's coming from somewhere beyond us.
Totally.
You know? And I think when we're really engaged in the present moment, like an hour passes by and we're like, whoa, what did I say and who said that? You know?
Totally. Yeah, we're the conduit just to discuss everything that's going on.
Yes. And it's a beautiful time and a hectic time to talk about the world and world events. I mean, it's a very transformative time, and I think people are waking up to all sorts of different things, and I think they say we're leaving the third dimension and approaching the fifth dimension, and I think people are kind of like, okay, we're occupying these souls, we're spirits, you know, having this mind-body human experience, and,
right?
And what does that mean? And that's why I'm so excited you're here. And this is also awesome too, because we don't even know each other that well. So this is like a very honest dialogue, and people are like seeing it in real time. And I think there's something really profound about that. I mean, it's one thing to have someone on here that you've spoken with many times in the past, but with you, I just feel like even our initial call before we got on the podcast, I'm like, all right, we're gonna do some really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's just gonna roll. It's gonna be easy.
Super.
Yeah, I think that in regards to the human experience and life and death and grief is something that's not talked about a lot.
Agreed.
And I'm happy to share my experience with it. It's really intense, and I feel like there should be a class in school on grief, especially losing your parents.
100%. And that's something that happened to you. You lost both of your parents,
exactly.
Right? So, and that's something I know you wanted to share. So I'd love to get into that and the level you feel comfortable. So thank you
sure.
for being here.
Of course. It was 5 years ago. My mom was sick, and I took care of my mom, and I was, you know, it was 5 years ago, and it was really challenging, but I also today feel her presence. Every lesson that she taught me, she left me very well equipped, mind, body, and soul and spirit. And part of the reason I feel her so much is because if I have a question, I'll literally be like, okay, Mom, what about this? And 9 times out of 10, we will have had the conversation in a different way in the past.
And you can just pull into it.
Yeah, you just pull from it. Exactly.
And it's like she's directing you almost in a way to the answer.
Yeah. And then, if I'm being in nature, I feel very connected.
Wow.
So, I'll see, and then my dad passed too, so I'll see, if I ever see a red cardinal, I think of my mom, and a blue jay, I'll see my dad.
That's going to make me cry, because my papa, my great-grandpa passed, and the cardinal is that's when I know he's around too.
Totally.
And it's wild too. I've never seen a cardinal. I don't see cardinals that frequently in Michigan, but I always have a cardinal that visits me outside this window.
Yeah.
Which is so far
That's your
out.
grandpa.
Right. And I don't think that's like something that people maybe respect or appreciate enough. I feel like that's like super woohoo in a way.
I understand. I think that people do once they've experienced a loss.
Yes.
And then can relate it to something in nature.
100%.
Right?
100%.
Yeah, I think that's amazing that your grandpa chills with you.
I think it's amazing your mom chills with you too.
My mom is with me. My mom's with us right now.
Constantly. Isn't it wild? It's like you almost see them more when they're not here than you did when they were here, and you get sad because you want to call them, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm right here." You know, it's like really weird.
Yeah.
And super powerful. I think it's strange almost that we don't talk about this in school, because we talked about before this when we were having our initial phone call, like in other countries and other religions, that's like something super sacred, and death is almost like a coming home experience where you get prepped for whatever's to come. And for whatever reason in the US, it's like, oh, we'll just kind of put that in the closet and not think about that until the time comes.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure losing both of your parents, it was kind of like a, whoa, like this is super real. This is profound. Like this is happening.
Right. It's real heavy, and it's you know, you don't really know how to move forward because you've never had to not, you've always had them.
Yeah.
And so that is what I feel there should be some education, some preparation, perhaps,
Yeah.
or maybe not, you know, but you know, it's, I think gratitude in everything that we have, an appreciation for everything that we have every second.
Yep.
And not taking it for granted is so much of what that is. Yeah.
Well, I think that speaks to the human experience too, because how often do we find ourselves busy and bothered by things that aren't even happening here right now, right? Like we're thinking about, oh, I should have done this, and that, or I'm nervous about the bills that I have to pay, and it kind of robs us of the present moment. And I'm sure losing parents, it's like, you probably wish you could have more experiences, you know?
Of course.
And it's one of those things where I think like parents, for better or for worse, it's like if we're at the bowling alley and it's like we have the guardrails up and, you know, our mom and dad are on the left and right side. And I'm sure after they pass, it's probably like, okay, now I'm like bowling and there's gutters, you know, there's no guardrails anymore.
Right.
And I'm like really living this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And for a little bit, I was vacillating between like, I was like, okay, when's Jeff going to die?
Yeah.
Because
and that's your husband?
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, wow. I just have to kind of prepare for this.
Yeah.
And like, it was vacillating between being totally vulnerable and then being totally independent.
Yeah.
And being like, okay, something's going to happen. I don't know. And now I think ultimately it's just taught me to completely trust myself.
Yeah.
And to know that I'm gold no matter what. Wow. And my mom really drove that home, Tyler. My mom.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, my mom always was like, Nikki, here's the deal.
Yep.
You're coming in alone and you're leaving alone. Your spouse is going to disappoint you. Your friends are going to disappoint you. Your family is going to disappoint you. You have one opportunity to not disappoint yourself.
Wow.
Be cool to yourself.
Wow.
It's just you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And she was real raw like that with me.
Yeah.
And she'd also say things like, no one cares.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, no one gives a shit.
Right.
And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, I hate to blow it, but no one cares. Like everyone's absorbed in their own
reality, their own experience.
Yeah. And I was just like, you know, my mom was she was just the coolest of all time. My stepdad, my folks got divorced when I was 3.
Wow.
Yeah. And my stepdad wanted to propose to my mom, and my mom's like, I'm not interested in a ring. I'll take a piece of artwork instead.
Wow. That's awesome. I love that.
That's how cool my mom was. Mm-hmm. She was so cool. And I have that piece of artwork in my house.
Oh, that's special.
Yeah, my mom was really into art and creativity and expression and kindness and generosity.
Yeah.
And so I just keep all of that on the forefront of who I am. Yeah. My dad is my dark side.
Yeah. Wow. It's funny. We have two wolves inside of us.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And my dad loved drugs and alcohol. He loved women.
Okay.
He was real handsome, very successful, and just a wild man.
Wow.
And so like,
you did really have the two.
Yeah, I do. And I'm very in touch with it. And my mom would be like, you have to, it's called hugging the cactus. You have to really embrace your dark side. You have to understand it like perfectly, because it's not human or realistic to think that you're just sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
You're not.
I'm glad that you said that, because that's a theme that came up last week's episode with Brandon, because we were talking about how this is the SmyleCast. And my whole brand has been for the last 2 or 3 years, like Detroit Smile. But, the older I get and the more time I've spent, like, doing, like, trauma work and healing work, like, you can't really have one without the other.
That's right.
That's right. And if you're not honoring the dark side of yourself, you also are not honoring the light side of yourself in the way that, you should. Because we can only experience like light as much as we can experience darkness, and it's literally like, the more you dig down, the more you're flying up,
Totally.
So yeah,
that's really cool, and that's really important. And I think that everyone's pace of learning that is very different.
100%.
And I'm just grateful that I got those messages from my mom when I did, and that she really drove them home for me.
I'm super glad too.
Yeah.
Because I think with what you said about, like, you have to honor and respect, your mom saying you have to honor and love yourself.
Yes.
Because I think especially like in middle school and growing up in elementary school and high school, like, we're constantly trying to be somebody, right? We're just like trying to be cool because it feels cool to be cool. It feels cool to fit in. We want to be all these things. But I think the older we get, the more we realize, like, okay, maybe it's cooler to, like, not fit in, Maybe, like, I don't have to go to that party. Maybe I can just stay home and just be a little weird, or weird for me, and just, like, read a book or paint, or, like, creative outlets is something we talked about too, and, like, stop playing this game of trying to impress everybody. Because there comes a certain point in life where you're like, I gotta stop this people pleasing, I gotta stop impressing people, because I'm never gonna make everybody happy.
Right. It's impossible. Have to make yourself happy, right? Yes. So the idea of weirding out is the coolest.
I think so too.
Honestly, that's where the coolness begins. Okay.
Yep.
And, like, I don't want to pass judgment, but, like, cool in high school, I want nothing to do with.
Me too.
And I don't think anyone wants anything to do with it.
Right.
Even especially the cool kids, because I think they got fucked the most.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. They learn late. It's like, if I think about, like, a show, if I think about what's Zendaya?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of
the movie or the show?
The show.
What show is she?
Yes.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
I know, me too.
Oh, it's right there.
I know, and the people are watching. They're screaming it out. I can't hear it.
They're screaming, yeah. Someone will know.
Yeah, but I think that, like, when I feel that the idea.
The one about the teens.
Yeah, of course.
No, keep talking.
Yeah, I feel that, like,
Euphoria.
Yes,
that's
totally. It's such a point. There's a lot of poignant moments and ideas around that.
It's moody. Like, it's wildly relatable, I think, for most of us, because I think we all had that experience. But to your point with, like, the high school stuff, like, I'm grateful too that I did maybe one too many drugs in high school, and I think I got a lot of that energy out of my system in high school. And I think for a lot of people that didn't maybe do that as much, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way to do drugs. In a perfect world, you don't do drugs, but I think human nature is to explore these things, and maybe they lead us to epiphanies,
Yeah, I did drugs. I partied really until I stopped partying probably 10 years ago heavily.
Yeah.
And but I was just smoking, drinking, and smoking weed.
Yep. Which is common nowadays.
Which is common, but it was kind of that was like my trifecta.
Yeah.
But it was still excess and it was still not helping me.
Right.
What was your drug experience? Hardcore, like RFK heroin?
Not as much heroin, but I did pills a lot in high school, so I did like the Xanax. And interesting thing, and I'll try not to go on a sidebar for too long, but I think we kind of are products of our system and products of our environment.
Yeah.
And I think I got an MIP when I was 16,
minor
which
possession.
is a minor possession,
okay.
and then I got 2 more before I was 21, which is silly and trivial. But it's interesting at that time because I don't really think smoking weed is bad. I know a lot of my friends in the weed business. I think anything you do in excess can be bad. I mean,
Agreed.
if you're smoking weed nonstop, it's probably not good for you. Just like if you're drinking nonstop, it's not good. It's not good for you. But I think alcohol and weed aren't as bad as some of the harder drugs. But the tricky thing for me was when I got an MIP, I got drug tested, and that's the time in my life where I stopped smoking weed and drinking alcohol, and then I got prescribed Adderall and Xanax. Right. So then it's like, okay, like I'm having my drug dealers now not buddies from high school, but now they're pharmacists.
Correct. Right.
And that creates like a whole nother thing that they're now RFK and all that. We're trying to stop the psychiatrists from drug dealing and the pharmacists from drug dealing. And at that point in my life, it was like, okay, it was a shame to smoke weed, but yeah, I mean, I could take 100 milligrams of Adderall and no one would bat an eye, or I could take a bar of Xanax a day and be prescribed it, but that's what my psychiatrist wanted. So, and I lost a bit of myself during that time, and I isolated, and it's tough though, because you see all your friends like being carefree and smoking weed, and you don't think that's that bad, but everyone around you in your drug treatment facilities being like, okay, Adderall and Xanax are fine, but weed and alcohol are bad.
Right. And then, I mean, and I really appreciate what you're saying, and you are 100% correct.
Yeah.
And I think that dichotomy has shifted ever since the legalization of weed.
Yeah.
And being in the cannabis industry, I have an understanding around it. And for me, my history was like, I used to be run by the game. Now I run the game.
Yeah, that's super powerful though. What a twist of fate, you know?
Yeah, because it was like, I know so much about it. I know like the exact feeling of this, and this, and I know so much about just the horticulture of it. And then I'm great at business. And so I'm just like,
you can tie all the knots together.
Yeah, and that worked. But I think the big pharma was really confusing for us coming up. And I think people are waking up to it now, just like you said.
Yeah.
And also just waking up to a lot of things.
Yes.
A lot of things.
Yep.
But I do believe there were always like black sheep. Like I feel like my mom was kind of a black sheep who would question things.
Yeah.
Who would not necessarily follow along. Did you have one of those as parents, or?
Yeah, I think like I got really fortunate with both my parents because they had like, just like you said with your parents, they scratched both itches. And I think like I got a lot of my business, financial, entrepreneurship qualities from my father, where I got more of like the lovey-dovey, God-focused spirituality elements from my mom. So I got really fortunate to touch both sides. And I think like for me, and I think what's been so profound to be on this journey we're all on now as humans is like, I started waking up to these things when I was like 20, like about the pharmaceutical industry and all of these for-profit corporations. And it's not just pharmaceuticals. I mean, it's super deep into like diet and the food we're consuming and all of this stuff. But it's like at the time I was 20, I felt like the black sheep because, no one's talking about that. Like there'd be like a small 4chan feed or like a subreddit with like a bunch of conspiracy theorists. And now like conspiracy theorists are mainstream.
Right.
And it's really cool because, and I said this last week with Brandon, it's like, it was uncomfortable for me going through that experience without like a loving, supportive, not that my parents were loving and supportive, but like more people in my corner that were like keen to these philosophies and these topics. And it almost, gets into a little bit of paranoia because you're like, am I weird for thinking like this when everyone else is thinking like that?
Yeah.
So it's really beautiful to see what's happening with the current administration and now RFK being in charge of like our Food and Drug Administration,
right,
and the changes that he's enacting with policies and removing these additives, because shit, like we've been putting really bad stuff in our body for a long time.
Totally.
You know, there's fluoride in the water, there's food dyes in our food, there's preservatives that are banned in other countries, and now it's like there's a widespread national effort that we're all on the same page, and we're like, okay, like maybe we're sick because we're putting crummy stuff in our body.
I think I think that's really important, and I think that you're very correct, and I think each generation feels it, sees it, and can implement it a little differently.
Yep.
We chatted about just some of the local food preps and green franchises.
Yep.
You know, I'm now going to be doing some work for Pure Green, which I'm excited about, and they're an all organic.
Yep.
Smoothie bowls, toasts. They're in Birmingham. They are a franchise. But I think that that's a great option. I mean, I frequent that place a lot. It also just like really, I think it's just great to have options, educating people.
I think so too.
Because like when you eat in a way that makes you feel healthy, which is just the least processed, right? It's just fresh or fresher.
Farm to table. Yeah.
Exactly. Farm to table. It's just like you feel entirely different.
Because I think everything that we consume, and you may be able to go a little bit closer with the mic.
Okay.
Which is, beautiful. I think everything that we consume has like an energetic element. Like it's proven scientifically that everything we're consuming has energy. And it's not like if people want to eat pizza and cheeseburgers and do whatever they want to do, that's no problem. Like me and you are not saying like you're lesser for like wanting to eat junk food.
Right.
It's just like there may be more to life than like, you know, eating ice cream and pizza and McDonald's and you know.
Absolutely. And I don't want to interrupt you, but
it's beautiful.
The energy is exactly what you're talking about, right? And that's how we started talking.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like super full circle.
Yeah, and the energy in what you're eating and how, if you're preparing it or if you're getting it elsewhere. I think preparing it is so much of like we eat at home every night except one night. We go out one night.
Nice.
But I think that preparing your own food and shopping for your own food and having options, if you're not doing that, that are organic or high energy options on the go, like Clean Eats or like Pure Green, like Sweet Green, this is really great. But I think that the energy you're putting into it is all about how you're feeling, how you're treating others, how you're reacting, how you're experiencing your life, how you're experiencing your body, what you're doing with your body, what you're doing with your voice, what you're doing with your appendages, what you're doing to other people, and how you're existing. Right?
I love that. I love that you said that. Yeah, because we're even us, like as humans, we're just energy too.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're consuming high vibrational foods, we're going to be operating at a different vibration, right?
Totally.
And I like what you said too about like fast, fresh food, because the argument for a lot of people is like, oh, it's too expensive to eat healthy, or like, I'd love to eat healthy, but I don't have the options. So it's nice to see companies like you mentioned, and even like the Sweet Greens of the world. And some of these like there's a great place, Sprout House, around the corner for me, and they've been around for like 30 or 40 years, and it's like, they're way ahead of the curve. You know, they're making like fresh soup there. They're making, you know, tofu sandwiches, fresh noodles. Like they're doing it all, really.
Right.
And it's beautiful to give people options like that, because then it kind of dispels that thought process of like, I really want to be healthy, but I don't have time. Or I really want to be healthy, but I don't have money.
Right.
And there's all sort of other things, like when you go to the farmer's market, like we're very blessed here in southeastern Detroit to have Eastern Market, and to be able to go there with the farmers, and my sister rented a cow where she was getting like a gallon of fresh raw milk each week. So there's all these different things that are so accessible around us.
Yes.
And I think it's really about educating people to like understand that there is another way.
Right.
Right.
Speaking of the other way, I have to ask you, because I'm looking at this mushroom.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts on psilocybin.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So psilocybin's been something very near and dear to my heart. I microdose generally 3 or 4 times a week, a very, very small dosage, like talking like 0.05, basically just like the tiniest little speck. So it's never psychedelic, but it's always in a way that elevates my mood and increases focus. And for someone that's taken Adderall and abused Adderall for many years, it unlocks the same neural pathways in a beautiful way for me, but there's no crash, there's no come down, there's no stimulated feeling where if you drink a bunch of coffee, you're going to crash.
Yeah.
And the ones that I take also have like lion's mane and chaga and cordyceps. So it's like a full spectrum blend.
Yes.
And I've just been super grateful because for me, it's like there has to be another way than coffee. There has to be another way than Adderall.
Totally.
I'm so sick of stimulants. Like I can't do that.
Right.
And it's been a really beautiful journey with the microdosing. And beyond the microdosing, I'll macrodose like once a month. I took mushrooms a lot more frequently when I was like in college and like finding myself.
Yeah.
And it's been fun to like refine myself a bit.
Cool.
So I've just been like inching up towards like larger dosages. But mushrooms are really powerful because I always say that psychedelics are not hard drugs like cocaine, but they're harder drugs to do. Whereas like alcohol, you can just do it and you don't really have to like, it's just, what to expect.
Right.
Just like cocaine. Like you do cocaine, like what's going to happen. Like unless you do too much, you might be a little bit anxious. And there's also the risk of death associated with both of those substances.
Correct.
Whereas like, I think mushrooms like show us our true nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you might have like a really rocky experience with it.
But that might be what you need.
That might be what you need. You might need to be rocked. So I think like you do also have to honor psychedelics and mushrooms and make it like a ceremony. It's not just like a drug you're going to take and go to a concert and, have a good time. Unless you're doing like a smaller dosage. But
it's interesting. I don't have any experience with it.
Wow.
And I want to, and I want to understand it. So there's a gentleman who is in the cannabis industry who educated me a little bit.
Wow.
So are you familiar with the strain that you use for your microdose?
Yeah. So it comes in like a capsule. There's a few that I know that are most common, like penis envy.
Right.
Is
the
funny.
penis envy is the one. That's the main one.
Yeah, that's the main one going around.
And
now.
that's the one. Actually, that's the best strain.
Yeah.
That's what he told me.
Who is it? What's his name?
I don't know if I want to. If it's.
We might be a mutual friend. We'll talk about it offline.
Okay.
But I also know someone in the cannabis space but there's a lot of people in the cannabis. That's like cannabis space transitioning into the psilocybin world, which is interesting because it's.
This is what I want to say. He attempted to open a psilocybin space called the Shroom Shack.
Okay.
And the only way he was able to do it legally was he had to call it a church.
Oh, I think I heard about that.
And that this psilocybin was sacrament.
Yeah.
So because it's not legal.
Interesting.
Isn't this interesting?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It's decriminalized now in the same way pot was.
Right.
But it's a real gray area.
Yes, it really is. And like it's kind of aligned with like ayahuasca and a couple other things, but I have yet to experience it. And a couple of my friends have and they're like we have microdose, and I have one friend who I really treasure and value, and she uses it regularly, and she's like, Nikki, this is the greatest. And we were both in this gentleman's office, and he said, I have psilocybin like chocolate bars, and I'd like to give you girls them. And he gave both of us bars, and she's like, she did a very small amount. I gave mine to we have a phenomenal handyman, Ward, if you're watching. I love Ward.
That's awesome.
Ward,
shout out Ward.
Love you, Ward. Ward is the best, and I give him I have so many samples. So flour.
Yeah, I'm sure he loves that.
I have flour samples. I have live rosin. I have tons of stuff, and psilocybin.
Yeah.
And I gave him, and he's like, "This is such high quality."
Yeah.
And so it's just an interesting thing that like it can be offered as sacrament if it's in a church setting, but there's no money that can go other than donations. So there's all kinds of weird loopholes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, that have to go into play. But I'm glad that you have such a positive experience with it.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're really responsible with your intake all around, whether that's the information you're taking, whether that's the food, whether that's the drugs. And I think that is what is one of the most challenging things for humans.
Yeah.
So I think that a moderate to
balance.
be balanced. Are you a Libra? I'm a Libra.
I'm an Aries.
You're Aries.
But I think we have common traits.
Yeah, Aries is what?
It's like I think it's the 15th of March, around the 15th to the 15th of April, around that.
Got it, you're coming up.
I'm on the 30th. Yes, I'm like right, I think smack dab in the middle.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. So with that, moderate, right? So I think that so much of what human nature is often challenged by, whether it be addiction or just a gross overconsumption, whether that's words or music or
pornography, social media, alcohol,
whatever.
Anything.
Yeah.
I think really, Nikki, it's people like to feel good, and how can we? We're just creatures. Like we want to feel good,
of course,
And I feel like we want to feel good to the point where we know we're gonna rob some of our good feelings in the future, right? And I think that's why we get in this cycle of alcohol or cocaine or Molly or whatever we're doing. Like we know full well that we're gonna feel crummy the next day, but we still engage in these things.
Same with eating candy.
Yeah. Oh, I love candy.
Well,
Sugar's
who doesn't?
a tough one. It's a tough one.
But it's the
it
same.
Just gives your brain that like.
It's
zap.
A dopamine. It's the zap.
It is. We're the dopamine generation.
We are the dopamine machines in our hands.
Yeah. Oh,
the phone.
It's constant.
This is the dopamine machine.
Well, I wanted to share this too on the mushroom note because we're talking about mushrooms.
Please.
So I actually was reading this book. It's super interesting, and it was this guy. I can't remember his name. I'd love to drop it because maybe I'll drop it in the description, but it's the guy that had a very similar experience to me where like he was growing up and it was always like alcohol and Adderall and stimulants and Molly, and that was like his thing. And then in his like 20s, he started getting involved more with like psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin, and he's like a real smart guy, and he was looking into the chemical compounds behind the substances and how like the atoms and the molecules are all connected. And it was a really revolutionary study that he wrote because people joke about this all the time, but methamphetamine and Adderall, which is amphetamine salts, I don't know if you know this, but amphetamine salts, which is Adderall, and methamphetamine, like the meth that people smoke, is only one molecule off. So everyone that's taking Adderall every day to be productive they're basically taking meth. And that leads to psychosis, lack of sleep, decreased appetite, weight loss, mood swings, all of that stuff.
Sure.
So I found that very enlightening almost. And then he also writes in the same passage that psilocybin, which is the main compound in psychedelic mushrooms and penis envies and all the stuff we're speaking about, and serotonin is only one atom off. So like when you consume psilocybin, it's literally you're consuming serotonin. So it makes sense that when you're microdosing, especially in these small amounts, it's hitting your brain in a really nice way, but it's literally serotonin. So it unlocks creativity, good mood, social, like it's all of that in just this little miracle substance.
Wow.
Yeah.
So may I ask, like, have you ever experienced it where it wasn't good?
I mean, not in like the dosages that I'm taking, because the dosages I'm taking would be like if you're taking Motrin and you're supposed to take 400 milligrams of Motrin. I'm taking essentially 10 milligrams of Motrin.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't think I've ever taken, at least during the day, enough to have a negative effect.
Okay, good.
But when you get into these higher dosages, like, the medicine will show you some things.
Right.
And Paul Stamets is, if anyone's interested in this at all, Paul Stamets is the mushroom guy, and he's been studying mushrooms for many, many years. And mushrooms are super interesting in general. Like, they communicate with each other. Like, I don't know, I'll send you this, like, the Fantastic Fun Guy documentary I think you'd like, where mushrooms, they grow out of the ground, but then they have this layer underneath the ground where they're all connected, just like tree roots.
Right.
But they have this mycelium, and they like communicate with each other through these neural pathways underneath the ground, and they're like super smart. So it's like, I think we take these substances and they share these things with us.
Right.
So Paul Stamets is a really good one, and what's this other guy? I can't think of his name. It'll come back to me, but I don't know. I think it's revolutionary, and I think it should be studied more. And I do think, like, especially in Michigan, as the cannabis industry is going really well, I think I'm very confident in hoping that psilocybin will lead to legalization, because there's so many things that it's helped me too, as like a former drug addict and someone that has really battled substance addiction for most of my life, to be able to have something that I don't feel prone to abuse. Yeah. Because I have to respect it and honor it. Yes. And if I try and abuse it, it'll almost like kick me out.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that philosophy is something that should be adopted with everything. Yeah. So to honor it.
Yes.
And to respect it.
Yes.
Should be for everything.
Yes.
Everything that 100%. You touch. And I think that respect and that love and that care is probably like the solution to everything.
I think so too. I think you put that very beautifully.
Yeah.
Terrence McKenna was the other one I was thinking of. Okay. Look into Terrence McKenna too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that really speaks to the condition of the human experience too, that we're like open. And it goes back to that gratitude thing. Like my mom always said, and just like your mom sounds like said too, it's like, have an attitude of gratitude, right? And if you honor everything, you honor everybody. Like Ram Dass says, and Ram Dass is one of my favorite spiritual teachers, and all of these quotes are from him. Treat everyone you meet like Jesus in drag, which is like super profound, you know? Because even the people that like are just mean and ruthless to you, can you just like honor them and understand that a lot of times like it might not even be a you thing?
Oh, it's definitely not a you
thing.
Right.
I had this experience recently where I was at the mall a couple months ago getting my ear pierced at Claire's because it's like $30 and I wanted an earring. So I went to Claire's, and I think I was at Somerset, and I was walking out of the mall. And you just never know how someone's doing that day. Totally. You know? And I think, like, just like you said when we started this podcast, people are so consumed with their own experience that they wouldn't even notice half the time if you're not wearing pants or not. You know, it's like, right? Or they're on their phone, or they're caught up in their day.
I mean,
you know?
Yeah. So they're not there.
Right? So I was leaving the mall, and just like the double doors when you're leaving Somerset, or maybe it was 12 Oaks, irrelevant. But these doors were opening, and this lady was like behind me, and then like I let her go in front of me and, you know, into the parking lot. And she turns around to me and she said, you know what? Thank you so much. That really made my day. Like, you letting me go in front of you, like, this has been one of the worst days of my life. And like that experience changed my day, and I'm really grateful for you. And it's just like stuff like that we don't even think about. And it brings you so far out of whatever shit that you're dealing with, you know? Just a little sliver of joy and a little sliver of hope, I think sometimes is all people need.
It's connection.
It is.
It's connection.
Yes.
So the meaningful connections in the relationships that we have. Yeah. In work, in play, and in strangers. Yep. And coming together and sharing and enlightenment. I mean, that was like, you had no idea. You're just like, I'm just walking out of the mall, and I held the door, and that was wonderful. And this person appreciated it so much. Yeah. And I think that expression and actually opening your mouth and speaking to it, sometimes we don't really, sometimes we might not say it. Sometimes we miss the opportunity. I should have said that. Yeah. I should have told that person that. And you walk away from that, right? Yep. Isn't that like a funny one?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, but if you actually are in the moment and you just do it, and then like something comes of it, that's a cool thing.
100%.
And what is that? It's staying present, right? And 100%. So staying present, it's a hard thing to do too.
Yep.
Because you're on your phone.
We're so pulled in so many different ways.
Yeah. Absolutely. And everyone's guilty of it.
Yep.
And it's also a way to disassociate.
Totally.
Like it's
100%.
It's a way to not have to deal. But I'm so glad that happened to you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
And to your point too, I think the present moment, I know the present moment is all we have, right? Like everything that happened before this in 5 seconds in front of this, 1, 2, 3, 4, we just hit it, is still right now. Like wherever we're going to be, we're right now.
Right.
So why not bathe in what we're doing? Why not enjoy the experience we have for all that it is?
Yes.
And I think like you could take it a step further and realize that whether you're experiencing heaven on earth or hell on earth is just your perspective of any given situation.
And it's momentary.
It's momentary and it slides by. But it's like the more we try and cling, the more it dissipates, Well,
and holding on to anything. We
it's
don't
attachment.
want correct. Our goal is to not hold on too tight to anything.
Yep.
And that falls back on what my mom said. You come in alone, you leave alone. Be good with you.
Right.
Get good with you.
Yes.
I think that's the goal.
Totally the goal. And we are, it's interesting, and I'll expand on that too, because Ram Dass says we're all walking each other home, right? So like take care of you, but understand we're walking each other to the finish line, right? Like we're walking each other home, and home is whatever you believe in after this, incarnation, heaven, the space beyond that. But there's this fable I want to share about, about heaven and hell on earth. There was this monk. I'm going to try and paraphrase it the best way I can. There was this monk and there was this like wise warrior, and the warrior went to the monk to figure out like what enlightenment was, what heaven and hell was. And he asked the monk, what's heaven? What's hell? And the monk was just like being silly, as most like enlightened beings. They're just goofy, they're childish, and they're saying like, they're just busting him back and forth. And then the warrior's getting increasingly upset. And he says like, if you're not going to share with me what heaven and hell are, if you're not going to share with me what enlightenment is, like I will smite you, like I will kill you. And grabs his sword and goes like this, and he stops. And the monk says, that's hell. Right. And then the guy stops, the warrior stops, and he's like dismayed. He's like, it hits him. He has this aha moment where he's filled with compassion and joy and respect and love for that lesson. And then the monk says, no, that's heaven. It just like gives me goosebumps. Like that's like, and in moment to moment, we have all of these experiences.
Totally.
And sometimes it's not like this big aha epiphany, like, oh man, like I'm seeing 5 dimensions at once. It's like, wow, my mom just called me and told me she loved me.
Yes.
Or like an old friend texts you haven't heard from in a while, like, hey, I'm really proud of what you're doing online. And it's like, wow, that's worth it. Yeah. That's all I need right there. I'll soak in that all day.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that keeping your connections, keeping the appreciation you have for all the connections, that is well fed. Otherwise, you end up undernourished in your relationships. And that's when the gripping starts. And that's when the judgment and all of that all of that happens. And so I think we really nailed it, like in regards to relational intelligence, the relationships we have with all sorts of people, especially ourselves, and just the existence that we are in, and knowing that it's not forever.
Right. It's fleeting. And that's what makes it so special.
That's so true.
If there wasn't an end, we talk about grief. If there was never like an end of this journey, we wouldn't cherish the things as much.
No question. I shared this with my friend, and we were talking about this the other day. There's a great quote that says, airports have seen more passionate kisses and embraces than any wedding hall ever has. And also said that hospitals have heard more prayers than any sanctuary ever has. For one reason, love is leaving. Right?
Yes.
That's the truth.
That's so powerful.
I know.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning into episode 4 of the SmyleCast. We were having so much fun that the camera died. Thank you for being here, Nikki. This was very special.
Thank you. Thank you so much for opening your home to me. And this was amazing. And peace and love.
Peace and love, everybody. Tune into the next episode. The light in me honors the light in you. One love.
Namaste.
Namaste.